Welcome to Horsehair Hearsay
with me, Jen,
and me, Kate.
And today we are going to be talking about
starting your own business, whether it be on a huge scale or just your own little practice. We've got lots of things we're going to cover just to help you get going.
Amazing.
So this week we're going to be talking about starting your own business, something that a lot of people are fearful of. Something both of us have had a go at.
Bit of experience.
Hopefully we've come out the other side of some bad attempts and some hard attempts, and we can share lots of our advice.
When did you start your first business?
I was an Ann Summers rep.
Were you?
Yeah.
How old were you?
18.
Queen.
I think you had to be 18.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was actually quite hard, and that introduced you to everything really, because it was face-to-face and buying from Ann Summers because you're just an agent selling. So yeah, that's I bet you weren't expecting that.
No.
I was actually saleswoman of the month.
Of course you were.
Yeah, I've kept the certificate. I think it's on my CV. How about you?
Yeah, when I started my practice when I was like 23, I think. Yeah. Before that, I just used to job ride for people.
But that's in a way, still your own business, isn't it? And people forget, even, going and charging somebody for some coaching or clipping can be a business, and you need to cover yourself.
Yes.
So, identify if what you do is actually a little business.
Yes,
is one
that's
thing.
A really good starting point, yeah.
So, obviously we've got good experiences and bad experiences to go from, but following our last podcast, I had a non-horsey person say to me, I won't give her away, but she's starting her own business, and she's been talking about starting her own business for probably 6 or 7 months, and she's come up to me and said, I listened to your podcast, it's a shame you don't do anything non-horsey. And I said, well, it's all transferable. And she said, I'm just really scared, I don't know where to start, I don't know if I'm meant to have a separate bank account, I'm doing it with my friend, do we need to have any agreements, what do I do about my name, can I have a Facebook page, all these questions. So I thought that would perhaps be a great thing when I spoke to you that we cover to start with, is just getting going really, and what you need to do from legalities, compliance, and really getting through the week.
It can feel like you've got like a never-ending list of things to do. So I think the first thing to do is to try and find a way to organise yourself. I'm not the most organised person by nature. I know that some people are like super organised. I'm really not. So I need to have, just like really clearly defined list of what you need to get done. So like choosing a name. This is a big one. How do you check your business name?
Okay, well, you're a couple of steps ahead, because I suppose choosing a name will depend upon what you're going to be. So you're going to be a limited company, you're going to be a partnership, and there's different ways of checking things. And you can also look at copywriting your name and your logo and things further down the line. So if we take a couple of steps back, you've got to identify what your business is to start with.
Yeah.
So you then need to say, right, what am I looking to deliver? Is it a service? Is it a product? And how am I going to do that? So you need to do some market research. So we'll take an example. If you are a horse dentist, you'd want to know what other competition there is in your area. And if there is a lot of competition, you need to look at how you're going to get a unique selling point. So I know we talked about unique selling points earlier in relation to Equigate, didn't we? But I think that's probably an important thing, to look how you're going to stand out. And I know on your story, I think it was today or might have been yesterday, you were talking about there being so many therapists out there. It can be quite daunting, competition-wise and things. So
for sure, there's never been as many therapists as there are now. Animal therapists, whether it's equine or canine. So trying to find a way to slot yourself into the market, and this works with it could be transferable to any industry. Like, have a quick Google, have a quick look on Facebook, and see what other service providers are in your area. Look at the price point that they're at and look at what they're offering. You can even, when we say do market research, that can sound a bit intimidating to someone if you
a Facebook stalk of
Yeah.
people doing the same thing
Do
as
a
you.
Facebook
In
stalk.
simple
You
terms.
can even send inquiries, be like, how much are you charging, or what would you do for this, so that you can gauge an idea of what their wait list is like, you know, how busy they are, things like that. And if someone is super busy, then you could always even reach out to them and be like, look, I'm starting up in the area. If you wanted a partnership, like, to make an agreement going forwards, we could share bits of work, things like that.
That's an interesting point, because I think people might be really scared and say, oh, there's somebody else doing the same as me on this same patch, as it were. I'm not talking about drug dealing here, but it sounds a bit like we are. And probably transfers to drug dealing as well. You don't fight with them.
Not that we're advocating setting up drug dealers.
No. But you don't fight with them. You go and you say to them, look, I'm thinking of doing this, and try and almost use them as a bit of a mentor, and they will have more respect for you and might recommend you than if you sort of can be seen to be taking over their patch, as it were. So I think that's a really good takeaway point from that little opening, really, is don't be afraid to approach other people in the same
who
industry.
are already established. I know I've said this to, you know, people I've had on work experience and stuff, like, building your business is going to be hard. Team up with an established practitioner in the area, and if you can help with their workload, help their caseload, offer to help them in some way to help establish your business. But that's quite a nice first step.
And then you can sort of cross-refer in the future, even as you catch up with them.
Yeah, teamwork.
And I think the other point that we've just touched upon is making yourself unique. So thinking about my law firm, we're quite unique because we're more bespoke to people's needs. And take, for example, something extreme, criminal defence work. You don't get paid a lot for going to the police station. Most firms will want you almost to be charged so they get money, whereas we try and stand out from them by helping people not get charged. So you need to look at what everybody else does and whether or not actually you've got things that you can bring to the table that are a bit different. And then, as you say, that makes you stand out and build your own little place in the market, really. And I know when we talked about things even on a more simplistic level, when you look at your app, you were saying that on every other app you have to put your Apple details in, and you know you get charged, but with yours, your free intro literally is free. You don't put any details in, so you've spent a lot of time looking at other people's and what will put you off.
See what stumbling points are and try to remove them, take steps to remove them, and just make it easier for people to receive the service that you're offering or experience the service that you're offering. So yeah, when we say market research, it doesn't need to be like going to a market research company. It's like just do your own Facebook stalking, make some inquiries, reach out a bit and see how it fits with your idea for your business.
And invest in that time. It may be, you know, it may equate to a few days that you can't charge for in your life, but in the long run, you'll help yourself with who you work with, your place in the market. So sit back and go, what can I do that's different? Or how can I work with people that are already there? Because you're going to have to do one or the other. You're either going to have to stand out from everybody else, be cheaper than everyone else, which isn't what we're advocating, really, or be mates with everybody else and work with them. So you've kind of got a couple of main options, which is work with people or stand out, because you don't really want to be undercutting because you're not valuing yourself then. No. And I think that was a bit of your advice.
You attract a different clientele, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think you'd mentioned this before, that when you first started out, you put yourself a bit cheaper to get your client base, and you ended up with poorer quality clients, if we can use that as a as a word. But you know, you've got people that don't really want to or can't invest in better therapists, and then you sort of wonder what quality you're going to get with the work you have.
Ultimately as well, I did a call with someone earlier this week, and we were talking about price pointing, and the thing is, whether you have children or not, our animals are often like our children. And the one thing that we like to feel...
Got Patsy on your
I was going to say, I was glancing down because I got Patsy on my knee. The one thing that we like to feel that we are doing the best we possibly can for is for our children or our animals. So, you know, my advice to animal practitioners would be try to find a place in the market where you're offering the best service you possibly can.
We still want to give value for money for your clients, but don't devalue yourself in that process, I suppose. So yeah, market research is a really big one that I think isn't as scary as it first sounds. So starting point, identify who you are, what you want to be, because that will then lead you on to these next steps. Because if you've not thought about who you're going to be, you're not then going to be able to get the right name and the right branding, because you'll be reflective of your place in the market as to how you're branding yourself. Again, we can think of really simple examples of supermarkets. You can clearly see with their branding and their name they've considered their overall objective. So you need to know what you're going to be before you think about your name. So once you've thought about your place in the market, the next step is to think, right, how am I going to deliver this? Under what front? Under what brand? So naming wise, what are your thoughts on how you name yourself?
So my advice would be find something that isn't too long. You know, I've got quite a complicated name, and that has been
Genevieve.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to think how to spell that one, don't you?
Way too many E's.
And finding you, I suppose, on socials and on the internet and everything becomes more difficult.
Some of the spellings of my name, thankfully, whoever did my website embedded a load of terrible spellings of mine. Like, you can really make a meal of it typing my name, like get it completely wrong, and it will just about pull up my website still. But think about that. Be easy to find. Don't have a really bizarre, unrelated business name. If you're doing something that is in an industry, even if you are a cleaner, have a cleaning related
something
name,
dust or something else, or spark or something that will come up under searches.
So that would be an idea. Keep it simple, keep it to the point, keep your website relatively easy to spell, like, you know, things like this. If you use a website, well, you can do it on Facebook as well, but again, just make your name relevant to the industry that you're in, really.
I mean, some older industries like accounting, solicitors, things like that will like big long surnames because it gives an impression. I mean, I know somebody that had got an accountancy firm, and I said, your name is nothing to do with the name of your firm. They said, yeah, we just looked at like really fancy surnames, put them all together, and it made us sound really impressive. So it wasn't actually linked. But again, I suppose that shows a thought process.
It's the brand, I guess.
But and I suppose with equine ones, just make sure that yours is a bit different to the common ones, because you want people to find you, not find somebody similar to you. So think very much about your name, because you're going to have it for a long time.
Do the research. You know, I've seen a couple of people who maybe have set up in practice, maybe not checked thoroughly enough, and someone else is operating under a virtually identical business name.
Yes, I suppose that brings us on to structures and naming. So if you're going to be a limited company, it's really easy to check your name, because I mean, we set people's companies up for them, but it's pretty simple to do it yourself if you're savvy with going on government gateway websites and things. You just simply put in your choice of name, whether you want to be a limited company that's got limited in the name or just LTD. Obviously, you can't have two companies with the same name and a different ending. But if you put in what you want, let's go for, I'm looking at a picture of a light, and we're in Stafford. So if you put in Stafford Lighting, for example, if that's already in existence, it will come up and say you cannot use this name. And it will also pick up ones that are too similar, which is really helpful to you, because you don't want something similar. And it might even make suggestions for different ways to chivvy it around. What I would say to people is there's a lot of these, when you put in registering a company, there's a lot of companies that come up that basically do it for you. But the information you have to give them is the same as doing it yourself on Companies House. Yeah. So if you're relatively competent and you're going to have a simple structure, which we'll talk about, then do it yourself on Companies House. Don't pay more for somebody to do it for you.
Amazing.
And you can do your name checking and everything in real time then. You're not passing the info on to someone else that's going to have to come back to you and say, oh, that name's gone.
And what about for a sole trader?
Sole trader, there isn't such an easy way, but obviously you can do a Companies House search for the same names, because you can just go on to Companies House and search company names straight away when you go on the website through the link. But the best way is just to look on Google, Facebook, and just search what comes up. I mean, ultimately, if there's somebody that's got the same name as you and it's not on Companies House, or it's not on a first window of a Google search, it's unlikely that it's going to be copyrighted and they're going to take any action against you anyway. So what I would suggest, and we'll come on to that later down the line, is if you find some really strong brands and you go, wow, why has no one else got that name? It's brilliant. Like Equigate, for example. That
literally happened when I was looking for names. I was like, it's kind of like the gateway for all of our equestrian needs. I wonder if Equigate, it's available. I will take that one. And again, I searched the websites, look for your .coms, .co.uk's, like start to accumulate the websites, which aren't often too expensive to buy, so you can just is it the domain?
Yeah, I'll bank that thought, because I think we can talk quite a bit about the socials and things in a minute. So in relation to name, I mean, we suffer with KMC Legal and Finance. because it was around for quite a while before I actually started trading with it. And following that, there's another firm called just KMC Legal. Yeah, they're not anywhere near us, but there's been a bit of confusion. Which Business Life got good reviews.
I think I called them once.
Did you? Well, they just do property stuff. Yeah. So, but anyway, my point being, you do have to check for something that's even similar rather than just the same, because there can still be confusion. But in relation to Equigate, obviously you identified that that's something that could be used by a lot of different people. Mm-hmm. And therefore you got that copyrighted yourself personally and your logo. That's something that we do for people quite often. It's relatively simple and you can copyright the name and the logo and everything, and it just protects it. I think there's been some Kylie stuff going on in the news about Kylie Minogue using Kylie and Kylie Jenner. I think there's been some... Georgie's nodding at me. I think there's been quite a lot of turmoil about who owns the Kylie brand.
Wow.
So yeah, it doesn't cost a lot. I can't remember off the top of my head, but you're talking a few £100s to get it done, and then that's yours and you own it. And you could always sell the trademark in the future if you get a really good one. There you go. So that's setting up your name. So structure-wise, it goes hand in hand, because you might decide, right, I am going to be Equigate, but are you going to be a limited company? You're going to be a sole trader? And there's so many things to consider. And I think it also depends on whether you're doing it on your own, whether it's something that you perhaps, I don't know if it's a tech company, I'm not suggesting you want to do this, but in the future you might go, oh, I could sell some of that, or I could completely come out of it. But if it's sort of your own business where you're delivering therapy work, it might just be you, and it's not something that's ever going to be transferable to someone else, so you might decide being a sole trader is better.
And if I was considering just, starting up any business, and I've for instance, I've been in an employed job all my life and I want to start up a small business, how do I know if I should be charging like tax on, like VAT on what I do?
Okay, so first and foremost, there's lots of different tax implications whether you're a limited company or a sole trader. But you're not going to be at risk in relation to VAT, which I think is what you're most concerned about, depending on what you're delivering and how expensive you are for quite some time, because the threshold, I think, is at 85,000, we said. So just double check, obviously, because if you listen to this podcast in a year's time, it might change. But you are talking close to 100,000 rather than,
And that's turnover or profit?
It's turnover, so that's important as well, because I've had quite a few people who I'm like, how are you not VAT registered? Like, we don't make that much money, and it's not about what you make. It's about what you're charging your clients and what that totals up to in the year. So again, Georgie's nodding, it's still 85. We have to check these things in real time, so people are going to rely on what we say. How that works is if you are charging your clients, it's not one client, it's all of your clients. If your income, say you put all of your income into the bank, once that hits 85,000 in a 12-month period, then you have to notify and get a VAT number.
Got you.
There's benefits to that though. You can be VAT registered even if you don't turn over 85,000.
Got you.
Because depending upon your business, as a service provider, as a therapist, it's probably not as relevant because your expenses are probably not going to be too high. But if you're in a product related industry and you're buying things in, you're going to want to reclaim your VAT. So you find that some small business can be, in quite a positive position if they are VAT registered.
And where could I go to read about this kind of stuff?
Government website.
Yeah. Nice. And obviously, going forward, once I've looked at starting a business, I need to start keeping invoices. Now, that can be fairly intimidating to think about if you've never done it before, but it can be quite simple, really.
It is simple. One of the things that's changed, again, if we just look at the differences still between a limited company and a sole trader. So with a sole trader account, it's not so complicated. You just do your declarations once a year and you keep your books and keep your records. As a limited company, you're going to have to actually produce accounts, okay? Now, those accounts mean that you're not going to have any taxes due, save for any VAT or PAYE, but your profits are not going to be taxed until 9 months after your year end. So you've got quite a bit of time to get yourself organised. But you think that, and then you get to year end and go, oh my God, I've got a month to get my accounts in. So the downfall to being a limited company is you have a little bit more reporting obligations because you have to do those annual accounts. that will normally come with some cost because your accountant's going to charge you.
Where would I find an accountant? How's the best way to do that?
Trustpilot, I would suggest. So ask people, and I mean that's sort of what I've always said to people is ask your friends that are in business who they use, because there's nothing better than a client recommendation. You know, if I say to you my accountant's really good, he probably is, because I've had that direct experience.
The other thing to say, we ask somebody in a similar industry. So like if I had started a cleaning business and asked you for an accountant recommendation, that might be, because he's very good at being a big legal firm accountant, but possibly less with the smaller firms. So you could ask for a recommendation from someone in a similar industry to see who they use. That's a good one. But then you said Trustpilot.
Trustpilot's a good one. And I mean, I say that to a lot of people when I get asked about all sorts of service providers. Go on Trustpilot because it's the most... And Google reviews as well, because you will see people who have had experiences. Now, a lack of positive feedback isn't always much of a sign, because if you had a good experience, you don't necessarily think, I'm going to go on Google and I'm going to do it. And I mean, we've had some people that have had fantastic results, and you have to badger people to say, don't forget to leave us a review. But if somebody's had a bad experience, they're definitely going to write about it. So I would say go there and check. Don't look at the good ones, because that's not too much of an issue. Look at the bad ones. And somebody local to you, and somebody that you can actually speak to. Because lots of my clients have, you know, given feedback about their accountants, and if they're not local, and like you say, they don't understand the industry, they're not just on the end of the phone all the time, it's worth paying a bit more to have somebody who you can pop and see, who will help you. But you need to make a decision whether you're going to do bookkeeping or not. So your day-to-day record keeping, which we'll talk about, whether you're going to pay an accountant to do that or whether you're going to do it yourself. If you're a bit bigger, are you going to be responsible for working out what your couple of staff or lots of staff are paid, or are you going to pay an accountant? So I think it all has to be integrated into your initial structure. Am I going to be a limited company? Am I going to be a sole trader? Am I going to have staff?
And then if you are a sole trader, have a separate bank account for it, so that it's really clear what is business related and what isn't.
It's a legal obligation if you've got a limited company to have a separate bank account, so that's really important for people to know. And then in relation to that, I know with a lot of the high street banks, people have been really suffering with opening new accounts post-COVID, I suppose. But some of these online banks like Monzo, Tide, Starling, we use Starling, they're brilliant because they are equipped for small businesses. So one of our clients, we helped set him all up with his bookkeeping and everything, and he uses Monzo, I think, I'm just looking at Georgie, and it literally, he can generate invoices dead quickly, and it all balances with his bank account, and he can print off reports and everything. So they also act as a bit of an accounting function for you as well. Now, I know everybody loves cash, and cash is king, but from an accounts point of view, having everything on one bank account going into your company bank account or your sole trader account is the best thing to do, because you can print it off once a week, once a month, to do your bookkeeping, tick off, yes, I've had £100 off John Smith, there's his invoice, and you can cross-reference and reconcile everything dead simply. So it is your record of everything, isn't it? So definitely get an account. Now, when you open a new account, certainly with Starling, if you have something that requires a license, for example, so say you're a practitioner, or even I'm thinking about if you've got a pet shop, you have to have a license to sell pets, they will ask you for those documents. So again, you might not be able to set your bank account up until you've done more of your groundwork, because you might not have the documents to open a bank account. And this sounds really silly, but it's quite hard to open a bank account nowadays without all that material readily available.
Brings us back to this list, because otherwise you'll end up like having to do 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Oh no, I can't get that done because I need to do that first. So this is on our list here.
What we'll do is we'll generate, perhaps I'm looking at Georgia, we'll perhaps do a little checklist when you start your own business, things to consider. That's nice. To give you a bit of structure. So whether you're going to be a limited company, we still haven't really answered the question on that. Whether if you're a limited company, it's going to protect you because your company is, I always think of it as a person, a bit strange, but they're a completely separate legal entity to you, and they're liable for everything. So it has its fors and against, because the company has the money, the company then pays you, as it
Yeah.
were. But there's that separation. So if something happens while you're at the coalface, obviously you'll be insured, but sometimes your insurance doesn't always cover you. It separates you from that liability because it's the company that becomes liable.
Got you.
So that's an important consideration. My
But
view
a good
is-
accountant can help to advise you on this when you're, like, you know, if I was starting up in a business, I could go on Trustpilot, find an accountant, ask for an appointment and just ask some advice on how to get set up properly. Is that like a good...
Yeah, definitely. And some of these packages, I mean, I know Equigate obviously does your invoicing and things, but packages you can have in the background, Xero, QuickBooks and what have you, they just give you snippets of advice as you're working through them as well. But I think 90% of the people that ask me specific advice on whether they should be a limited company or a sole trader, I'll go with limited company. But it really does depend on the nature of the business. And I appreciate, I suppose, in this industry, a lot of people probably are leaning towards sole trader because there's less personal risk to them.
Yeah.
So you've got your name, you've decided what you are.
Yeah. Where I'm going, what I'm doing.
Website.
Yeah.
I've always used GoDaddy.
Yeah, we use GoDaddy.
Really user friendly.
Yeah.
And you can buy your domain, you can get your email. So having your own email and website is always good.
That doesn't need to be super expensive. Same with a logo, same with any kind of graphics that you want doing. There's brilliant kind of resources that you can find now. Like, just go on Fiverr. So if you've not heard of Fiverr, it's Fiverr, and you can just like find skilled people to help you with what you need super affordably. You could probably get a logo drawn up by a graphic designer somewhere in the world for like 20, 30, maybe 40 pounds.
We use quite a big company for all of our branding. It's £30 for a logo.
Half nothing, you know, it doesn't need to be really intimidating doing that. Same with getting a website built. Again, just look at the reviews. Like we said earlier, just search for your website. So search for whether search for whether that website exists already. And again, consider all of this when you are choosing your name for your business. Search on Instagram, search on Facebook, see if there's people there already. But if you've got a website in mind, see if you can get that or get a variation on it, on how it's
if you go on, say, GoDaddy, I mean, I'm not advocating for everybody to build their own website because I know you've kind of got to be a little bit techy and a bit arty to do it, and you want to do it right, and it's not expensive to have one done. But certainly if you go on GoDaddy, you can put in your ideal website that you want. So if yours is like equigate.com, you can put that in and it will find you the right ones. And you're talking anything from, some of them are like a penny.
Yeah, half nothing.
And you get all the antivirus protection and everything on there as well. And when you generate everything to build your website, it does your cookie policies for you and all of these bits and bobs. So it's always a safe option. But yeah, website and socials, your views on socials when you're setting up in a business?
Depends on your industry, but I do think there is a valid place for social media presence. Ultimately, it's a great way to engage with your audience, build trust with your audience, and be able to talk about your product. You know, I spend a lot of time on Instagram. You're able to do like these lives, you can do Q&As, which again just help people to understand what your product's about or your service is about. I mean, it does really depend. I imagine if you were, I don't know, selling pen tops, you might not have that much of a, sorry, Patsy's
For me to have
fuming. Yeah, look, just gauge it. But I've found social media to be a really great tool. So I'd certainly consider that. And it's free to get started, and you can start creating content. There's loads of.
Look out for part 2 where we will continue with this chat.